different geographies and the different. Well, it depends on industrial symbiosis, so it's very locally founded. You could say we are trying to find a toolbox where you could apply to different localities of what you have. The project is also interested because we have pilots, so we are making construction materials in pilot scale in this project as well. So we go out of the laboratory, which is not so often that we do. But what we do here, the project starts over here, over here where we actually do have the ashes, where we have incinerated biomass waste, as I said, and sludge, gotten energy out of it, and then the project starts here, where also our vision started, which I showed to you. And first, I would say that this is a very important point because what we figured out, or what we knew before, but we really saw it in this project where with a lot of partners, it is that we simply characterize ashes so different. It's so difficult to compare, and you can hardly extract anything from literature because everyone is doing their own characterization scheme. So in the project, we have developed a characterization scheme which we suggest, it's agreed on by the partners, which we suggest researchers to at least use some of these methods. So we can compare, in literature, and we can actually extract and have a huge amount of data. This is, as I said, difficult today because we all of us use different methods. So this was some of the first things we did. And then what we are doing now is that we are producing construction materials and we are recovering resources. And at DTU, our part is to recover resources and afterwards use the ash into construction materials. Some of the other groups are using the mostly non-toxic ashes directly into construction materials as secondary resources. And these are the work packages. It's a bit complicated, and I will not go through it. I just want to mention again, it is this industrial-urban symbiosis, so it's very local. You could say it's targeted at a local audience. And what we have is we have a work package here on recovering the valuables, which we are leading at DTU, and then we have a very large work package here on the different materials that we can use. We can produce construction materials that we can produce from the ashes. So now I go to the first ash, which I promised you to talk about, and that is the sewage sludge ash. You can see it here to the right. It's really red, and it's because at the wastewater treatment plants, we often dose iron chloride there to precipitate phosphorus and keep it into the sludge. And when you incinerate it, you get a very high concentration of iron oxides, and this is, of course, what gives us the red color. There's much more interesting things to say about the sewage sludge ash than the color. Well, here we can see the main by XRD, often we see that the main fraction of this sewage sludge ash is quartz hematite, as I just talked about, whitlockite, which is calcium phosphates, and then we have calcium carbonates. And if you go to the small box I have here to the very left corner, you can see that there can be a quite high phosphorus content in these sewage sludge ashes. Actually, up to 10, or even more than 10% per weight can be phosphorus in them. It's always a high content, but it can be really high, as you can see. And actually, this in the range of these ashes, it's in the same range as phosphorus mines. It is on the lower end of the phosphorus mines, but there is an overlap there in concentration. So you could say that this could actually be, compared to concentrations, regarded as a mine. Then I put some concentrations of heavy metals there, and please see that these are in milligrams per kilogram and not in grams per kilogram, so it is much, much lower than the phosphorus content. But still, it is a bit problematic because, of course, we do not want to spread these at farmland. The idea is to produce a nutrient. Phosphorus is such a scarce resource, we should really take care of it, and therefore we should take it from secondary resources to the fields again. But we should not spread it with the heavy metals. And there are different procedures to extract phosphorus, and many of them are based on extraction in acids. And what I show here is a graph where we have suspended sewage sludge ash at different pHs. It's in nitric acid. And then we see which percentages of these are actually solubilized. And here we can see that, okay, if we go low in pH, we solubilize phosphorus, but we can also see that heavy metals comes along. So that means that when you extract it in acid, you will have to treat it afterwards to separate phosphorus and heavy metals. In the electrodialytic method, which we developed, it's it's extraction and separation of these two phosphorus and heavy metals at the same time. And here's a two-compartment cell, which we have most recently actually developed. It was patented in 2014-15. So it's not that new, but it is a new cell that we actually designed, and then we are using the others still in the research, of course. Here you can see in the compartment to the left where I placed the anode, I have the suspension of my sewage sludge ash, and then I have a cation exchange membrane separating this compartment from the other compartment here with the cation, allowing all the cations, like including these heavy metals, to pass through here. And that means that over time I acidify my ash here from the reaction here at the anode, where you can see we are producing acid. So I acidify my suspension, and then when these heavy metals and phosphorus are released, as I just showed you, the phosphorus will stay because it's either negatively charged or uncharged if we go low enough in pH. But the heavy metals are, most of them, positively charged, so they are transported out of this solution. So what we have at the end here, it is that we have two products in this compartment here. We have a solution with phosphorus, high concentration, and then we still have the ash here, which is not totally dissolved. About 50% is left. After this treatment, 50 to 60% is left. So we have these two resources to take care of here. And at first, I'd like to see how well is the separation actually. And what you can see here is, again, here to the right, you can see a very naive picture, a sketch of the cell. You can see we have the anode compartment and the cathode compartment, two different colors. And over here on the graph, you also have a gray color, and the gray color shows what is left in the ash. And we can see that most of the phosphorus in these experiments were extracted. In these, it's actually some of the first experiments where we extracted about 90%. If we carry it on long enough, we'll extract 99%, but then, the extraction rate will, of course, decrease a lot by the end. So we normally say that it will be about 80 to 85%. That is, it can probably be economically feasible. So we can see that all the phosphorus stayed, as I had hoped for in my previous slide. It stayed in this compartment here, in the anode compartment, and then the heavy metals most of them are, which are extracted, are removed into the cathode compartment. So the separation is quite nice. I can see, as you can see, that something is left, but if we remember how small concentration we actually had of the heavy metals compared to the phosphorus, it is really, really low concentrations. So what we did was that we, of course, asked ourselves, how clean is this phosphorus product? Now it was a solution, and therefore, we evaporated it or evaporated the liquid phase, and then we got some crystals. They looked like this. My very nice technician came into the office and said, "What do I do with this?" It was, some white thing on the bottom of a petri dish. I took a photo, and then it looked like this. And then we got the year's Christmas card, as you can see. Immediately after, or shortly after, it did not look this nice anymore because it's extremely hygroscopic, because it's phosphoric acid. Most of it is phosphoric acid. What we have there, here you can see the major elements there. We have a lot of phosphorus, as you can see. Most of it is phosphorus. We have a little aluminum, almost no iron, and we also have some calcium. So there's also calcium phosphate and alumina phosphates, but most of it, as you can calculate here, most of it will be phosphoric acid. Then we could also look at the heavy metals, and in regard to nutrients, it's mostly cadmium that we are very concerned of. And in this salt here that I produced here, I have less than 4 milligrams of cadmium per kilogram of phosphorus. And if you look at European fertilizers or fertilizers used now in Europe, you can see that the average is 138 milligrams per kilogram of phosphorus. So it's significantly higher. So you could say that this is really, you cannot see that from these numbers, but I can tell you that this is the cadmium concentration, which is at the very lower end of what we are actually already now using as fertilizer. So here's a product which could be actually used. It's we need to figure out how we can, how should we handle it. Right now, well, I don't evaporate the water, which would probably not be feasible economically. I have a suspension which is about 3% of phosphoric acid, and the companies who would like to take it would like it to be 10%. So of course now we're optimizing it, but this is optimization on the concentration that we're doing because we can already use the product as it is. So we were very happy about this result, and we therefore decided to try to make it a bit bigger, because what I showed you before, that is 50 to 100 grams. And it's a stirrer, and a stirrer takes a lot of energy, so we tried to scale it up a bit. And I know some of you will be laughing when I say scale it up, but here it can go to 3 kilos, and for us in the lab, it is a scale up, and I am totally aware that we have 10,000 tons of this type of ash in just Denmark alone each year. So we of course need to scale it up a bit more than this. But what this is a new way to make the cell. Before I showed you that we had two compartments next to each other and then separated by an ion exchange membrane. And what this tube is, it is a tube which perforated, and then the outer side of it here, the white thing that you can see, that is the ion exchange membrane. And then we have the ash inside this tube. And then the cathode compartment, that is the container where it's placed into. And then this tube, it can be, it's turning, 150 degrees from time to time. And time to time, that means we can time it. That's what you can see to the right here. We can time how often it should be turned. So instead of stirring it, we're simply turning this tube upside down from time to time. And then we have the anode in the middle, and we have obtained exactly the same good results in terms of extraction here, but the energy consumption is actually much less, and this is because here we have more membrane area over the mass of ash. It's higher here, so therefore we have less. We have a smaller resistivity in the system, and therefore it's more efficient. We can also treat much thicker suspensions here. You can imagine that with the stirrer, it has a limit to how feasible can it be if you need to stir something which is really thick. This is almost sand, so it costs a lot of energy to stir it. But here it's not the same, because it's much easier, even though it's a heavy and have a low liquid to solid ratio. Then it's much easier to do it in this way here, and this means that we can have a stronger concentration of phosphorus at the end of the treatment here. Also, if we have a higher liquid to solid, lower liquid to solid ratio. This was published in this paper. So from now, we leave the phosphorus. The phosphorus is there. It's close, very close to being implemented. And then we will go to the construction sector and see what about the ash. Could we actually maybe use that into the construction sector? And here I'll just tell you very briefly that 50% of all extracted materials in Europe, they are extracted to be used in constructions. And these numbers, the next ones, are not for construction materials in general. It's about resource extraction. This is about resource extraction in general. 50% of the total greenhouse gas emissions, that's due to resource extraction, and 90% of the biodiversity loss and water stress is also due to resource extraction in Europe. So that's why we should really think about it. Also the resources, not only greenhouse gas emissions, but also the material resources. And here, the ash, after being treated electrodialytically, we have shown that it is actually a quite good product into concrete. You can see here that it turns red. The lower row here, that is where the sewage sludge ash has been treated with our method, with electrodialysis. Non-treated is on the top, and it's different concentrations there. And you can see that it's much more red in the lower part, and that's because what we are dissolving, it's not the iron oxides, because they are almost insoluble in acid, so they concentrate while we're dissolving other stuff. So that's why it's red there. But it showed quite good properties, this concrete here. But I would actually say, even though we had good results, I would say it's probably a better product in bricks. So these are baked clay bricks here, where we also have shown that it can be used. You can replace, depending, of course, on what you want to use the bricks for, but 50% of the clay, which is also a scarce resource, 50% of the clay can actually be replaced by these by this treated ash, but I would say maybe 30% is more realistic, but still it is a high amount of replacement. And now we have also valorized it. We have a PhD student who did the bricks that you're looking at the picture. and she's working on exactly this topic. So we hope that this is where the sewage sludge ash after treatments can be valorized into these bricks. So it means now that we have phosphorus for agricultural land, and we have the ash, the treated ash for the bricks or the concrete. And what we have left now is a small amount of heavy metals and other things other cations that we removed into the cathode compartment. And this one we'll, of course, have to take care of. It's not in my presentation here so much, but this is what we have left from the whole ash now. Now I'll turn to the municipal solid waste incineration ashes. And here I would like to say that they contain this. Sewage sludge ash was sort of relatively easy to work with, but I would say these ashes, it's totally different because they contain everything. And once I tried to look up what does impurity actually mean, and it is the fact that the substance is dirty or lower in quality because it is mixed with another substance or something that causes this. And I would say, okay, this is just a mix. So maybe you could say that these fly acids, it's only impurities. I don't know, but it's really all these elements that you find in them. And some of those you find, they are critical raw materials. And now we're again back to in Europe, because this picture here, it shows these critical raw materials, it shows which are the critical raw materials in Europe. These are, you can see it's the red dots. On the x-axis, you have the economic importance of these different elements here, and then you have the supply risk on the y-axis. And you can see that we have rare earth elements, for example. We have phosphorus, as I talked to you about before. And then we have, if we go below here, we can see that down here we have the heavy metals. They are not so much in supply risk, but they are actually of economic importance. And here, some of those I'll talk about, that it will be zinc and lead, for example, and copper is also here. Now I cannot find it, but I know it's here. So these elements are either critical or they actually have economic importance. And these resources are lost at the current practices where we're backfilling these ashes into mines. This is not a very clear one, but it is, when I have given this presentation before, many people say, yeah, but we simply do recycle these already, from now it's rare earth elements. We do recycle them already from our electronic waste. So why would it end up in the ashes? And I would just show you here, what you can see here, it's recycling input rate. And over here with 0 and 1, we have very many of the rare earth elements. So no, it's just something maybe it's something that we're dreaming of, that we're actually recycling these, because we are not. So we need to find out how to do it. We simply need to find out how do we get it out of our waste. And if it ends up in incineration, then the products ends up in incineration. Of course, they end up in the ashes. Before I go to rare earth elements, I would like to turn a bit into heavy metals. And I had a dream which did not come true here, but I had a dream that if we took samples throughout, this is another Danish incineration plant, if we took samples out of ashes, throughout the plant, maybe there would be a concentration of some of the heavy metals by the end here in the APC residue. And this is the last part of the fly ash before we are adding anything. So I thought this could be very nice. And here you can see that maybe there was something into it. We have most zinc and lead, which I just chose to show here. We had most of this in the APC residue and also in the last parts of the fly ashes. But you could not say that there was a good separation because we still have quite high concentrations in all the ashes. So this with separating it did not really work. But it is something that we could, if it could be optimized, then there might be something in it to collect the acid at different points. I didn't give up on it, even though this first test here did not prove to come through. What is done today is that if we have 1 ton of this fly ash, then there are different plants which can extract the salts from it. It could be NOAA, or it could be Stena Recycling, or it could also be, well, there are in the Nordic countries, I'm sure there must be others all over the world who can actually extract the salts here and valorize it. They can extract it to be very, very clean. Round Shells, for example, in Sweden has a plant where it's extremely clean, the salt product that they can extract. So this, I think it's such a good idea to do it. After you have extracted the salt, the ash is actually also stabilized. Not totally, but the heavy metals are stabilized better due to carbonation and other reactions in the ash. But we still have a lot of metals and we have a lot of critical and important resources left. And there's a huge potential there to extract a lot of these if we develop the methods. And here, of course, again, I can see time is running very fast for me. I can see that I can show you here, this is another cell which we have used. Now you can see that I have 3 compartments here in this electrodielectric cell. And it is actually a combination between the 2 compartments where I have put an anode directly in the suspension, and a 3 compartment where I have it here, the anode in a separate compartment. And this is because we want to acidify it fast when we have a 2 compartment, but we also want to remove the anions. So this is why we combined it here. And in these ashes, there's a lot of chlorides, and we don't want it to stay here in the liquid or the ash suspension. So here are what we recently extracted from such an ash in different types of cell. I don't have time to go into it, but there's not so much difference anyway in these different cells. You can see that the zinc is coming out nicely with 80% of the zinc extracted, and the zinc concentration is the highest. Zinc is also a valuable resource, as we saw. So this is a quite good result to get all this zinc out. It is not so difficult to extract the zinc from these ashes. Much more difficult is it actually to extract copper. Copper is also extremely valuable, so we were very happy to see that we could actually optimize it and also approach 80% of extraction of phosphorus. Lead, you can see it's not so easy. We're working hard on lead now. It's not so easy to extract lead from these ashes, but there are room for improvements here, which we are really working on. And when I say we, it is him here. This is our PhD student who is working also on the ash cycle project. It's Gottfried, and he's working with extracted exactly this. But I would say that if I calculate these numbers here from my graph to the left into extracted concentrations per ton of ash, it's still like it's 1 kilo of copper and it's 1.5 kilo of lead. There's much more lead than copper. And then it's 25 to 30 kilos of zinc from 1 ton of this ash. So I think it's actually something that we should consider, since these do come with a very major environmental burden when we take them from nature, from mining. I cannot take this one. It's too far. I have too short time. So I'll just jump directly into the rare earth elements. And here I would just show you concentrations, some of the rare earth elements in a fly ash, which is the lower one, and in a bottom ash. And what you can see here is that, we have actually quite higher concentrations in the bottom ash than we have in the fly ash. And it's because they have they need very high temperatures to evaporate, and that's why they actually stay in the bottom ash. And these are quite high concentrations, and Huilin, who you can see here, she's a postdoc, and she's working hard to extract these. And the results that I show you, both this and then the next slide, it's results from Huilin. They are not even really published yet, so it's really, what should we call it? They are new, new from the lab, but we are in the phase of writing them through. And here you can see she used a 2-compartment cell like the one I used for the phosphorus. And here you can see the different rare earth elements in the fly ash and the different colors. She applied different current strengths to the experiment. And these were the first results we got, and we were really excited because take a look at it. It's really high extraction rates of these elements, these extremely important elements that we have here from this ash. So we are continuing this work. But this is so important to the electrification. Many of these elements are used in the green transition. So it's so important, and they are so scarce, so we should take good care of them. And I think to use ashes as mines, it could be a possibility. One thing I would say here is also that It might be that we should actually use incineration as a concentration of it. Even though I said we have high concentration, it's still quite low concentrations. But maybe if we were incinerating the products we knew had a relatively high concentration of rare earth elements alone and not with food and other stuff, then it might be that we could have even higher concentrations, that we could even have some very good product to mine. So what I've shown you is that we can actually separate, we can extract it and we can separate it to some extent, but we really need, and that is what we're working on hardly now, is also we simply need to separate it into, we cannot have a soup with all the rare earth elements and all the other and a lot of other elements. Of course, we need to take it a step further. And I would say I was just reading some of our old papers the other day, where I tried to make a review of it. And I could say that here in 2003, we already said that we simply need to be able to concentrate the heavy metals. And there in the early part of the century, we also did some work. And this is what goes here to the left. It's copper. It's 98% pure copper, which we extracted in those days from soil. And we really worked hard to get it this clean. And I'm sure this is some of the most expensive copper you can ever find. But there are roots there. And now we're exploring them and trying to get it exactly like this to resources which are concentrated and are separated into groups which you can use. So this is my final one. It is this. I actually think we should learn how to mine these assets because there is a huge potential. But I also think that we do carry a responsibility for the generations to come. So they still have resources left in nature to take, and we simply reuse and recycle those that we already took out. For example, as I talked about here, here it's copper. It could have been phosphorus, also a resource, and then use the rest of it in construction materials. So we were not also harvesting and emptying out all our clays and easy to get sand fractions. So thank you very much for listening. I hope you're with me still. And if you're interested in collaboration or have any interest here, I just put by here. You can see this is my email, and I have I'm off course at LinkedIn also. And then I would like you to thank you once again, Krishna, because you gave me the opportunity to take a look into this together with you.
No, it's really excellent presentation. You have a lot of work done. Obviously, you could not show a lot of things, but people got the main essence of what you're trying to do. Really close the loop. Create the circular economy for all the waste materials. So we don't have to call them waste materials anymore. So. Yeah, I think what you're doing is great. I think we can get to the questions, but before that, I request everyone to show their video so that we can have a group screenshot. Let's see. I do this one, Lisbeth, just...
I think it's a good idea.
Everyone show their faces so that...
I hope I will have the picture also to remind me that I have this opportunity here.
I will send you the picture of this. I generally post it in WhatsApp group, but so let me give one more minute for everyone to just switch on their videos so that we can take one picture. Let's see. Give me 1 second. I heard your presentations in bits and pieces, but looking at this holistically, that was really enlightening.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So, are you ready, my student? Yes. Okay, everybody, look into the camera, please. Look into your camera and say, give a big smile. So let's see. Let's be all and be happy people here today. Okay. Can you look into the camera and see? Okay. Got it?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. So, let's, if you have a question, raise your hand and I can unmute and you can ask the question. Otherwise, you can type it in the chat box. Any questions that you have? I mean, it's amazing to look at extraction of all these valuable resources from the waste. And I mean, basically at the end, you're not creating any waste whatsoever. So everything is a resource. So anybody has any questions? So let's see, give a couple of more minutes. Let's see. You can, if you have a question, you can just type it in the chat box, and then we can take the questions.
I have questions for you.
Do you see the chat box?
I could open it. Look much like questions.
Yeah, they're all compliments.
Yeah.
See.
That's also welcome.
Yeah.
I was wondering, is it a topic that you're working on, some of you? Because then I think we should get in contact. It's not that there's so extremely many.
So there are some people who work on this topic in the attendees, such as
Yeah, that was what I thought.
yeah. I saw their names before. Let's see.
There's a question down in the very bottom.
Yeah.
What are the environmental challenges associated with metal extraction from incineration ashes?
Yeah.
I think it's a good question because I would say what the input for this it simply depends on if it's which type of method, of course, it is that you're using. But with our method, you use energy, and energy could be used for something else, even though it is from renewable sources. So the energy is put into it, of course, and then you could say that. For the sewage sludge ash, I was honest and told you that I end up with something on the cathode. It's something where there's some heavy metals. So there's a lot of calcium there. There's a lot of different stuff, different elements there, and this is a waste right now. We hope that it will not be in the future, but right now it will be a waste which needs to be disposed of. I would say that what we are, maybe you saw that I did not show any results where we put municipal solid wastes, incineration ashes into construction materials. And that's because it still contains, from my opinion, too many heavy metals, which we should not dilute into our construction materials. So there's a lot of things to think about. Maybe I turned it a bit, there are still a lot of things to think about, that's for sure.
Yeah. So people are typing their questions. We can get to those. Any attendees, they want to ask the question directly? I know Magdalena is here from Poland. She works on circular economy, and Vesna is there. She also works on it. Magdalena, so come on, ask a question or comment. You have to unmute. You have to unmute first. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. No, thank you for the great presentation. Actually, well, I don't have a real question, so.
Work in the same field?
Actually, my field is waste management, so I would say close, very close. And of course, mainly it's landfilling and the impact of landfills on the environment, and a little bit about Anthropocene. So yeah, I would say quite close.
Yeah.
And she's from Poland. I think you can connect with
Yeah,
exactly. I think that could be great.
Yeah.
But definitely at our institute, we do a lot of research about the ashes and for the slope stabilization and even at landfill site. So it was really interesting.
So we should connect.
It would be fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Vesna also does a lot of work on waste materials, fly ashes, characterization, and all those things. Vesna, you want to unmute and say anything? Any comments?
Nice to meet you. Colleague Vilma Dutman is saying hello.
Yes,
we are from the same institute. Yeah, but from the different laboratories, but we are cooperating nicely. Maybe one question. We are not so deeply involved into the extraction of rare earth element and like phosphorus and etc. But what are the main routes that you're recommending for using the ashes after the first step, after the recycling? So the next step using of those ashes in what? Building materials, materials? It probably depends what kind of leftover you gain.
Good question, and I would say it's very good that we still have almost 2 years left for the project. Because from this ash cycle project, because this is what we are actually investigating there. And what we hope for it is that we can say, okay, we have an ash with these properties. It would be best in bricks, or it would be best in geopolymers. It would be, but we're not there yet. But I would say it's a very important step to take, because right now we'll have, when we have a new ash, we'll cast again, we'll make new materials, and then we will test them. So of course we need to be able to generalize this with the ashes. Every ash is different, and we test it, test and test and test. And that's also why it was important what I said with characterization in the same way, because we are simply not there where we can go out and say, okay, you have these ashes, we can type in, the properties, and then we can say this one is best for bricks. We are not there, but we would like very much to go there in the ash cycle project, because it depends, and I guess that was also in your question, it simply depends so much on which ash do we have.
Yeah, definitely. It's like a generic name for the material, but each one of them may vary in a quite large scale.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you're dealing, what about my cooperation with Austrian colleagues? They have quite a problem with the municipal solid waste incineration fly ash, because it's treated like non-inert or even hazardous waste.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It is also in Denmark, it is hazardous waste. And we do not have waste deposits we can take it. So that's why we sent it to Norway, most of it, and to Germany. And they mix it in Norway, they mix it with acid. And then, the very alkaline pH of the fly ash, and then it's mixed, and then it forms a relatively solid product, and then that is mined. Put back in mines. But I don't think it's satisfactory to do it that way. And I would say, after I showed you that some of them are extracting salts from these processes, it's not my process but other processes. And after these processes, it's not hazardous waste anymore, because it's not so reactive, it's not leaching so much anymore. And then it's only classified 3, and then we could have it in the country. We could landfill it. But landfilling is also sort of wasting the materials if we don't mono in landfill it, so it could be digged out later on.
Yes, of course. Interesting. Yep. These salts are very inspiring, and I think a very good direction for the gaining of the real extraction, or as they said, the real scale. Will you be attending Spain in June?
Yes, I will. I'm looking forward already. Yes.
Yeah.
I can't wait to meeting you live.
Yeah.
That would be nice. Thank you.
Nice presentation.
That would be a great networking opportunity, and to talk a little bit more. I mean, there are a lot of comments or in the chat box, and maybe I can save that one and send it to you, Lisbeth.
Yes, that would be nice.
I think there is a couple of people are asking questions about economics. And so anything on that one? And the other question is the water requirements for your ED, the quality of the water, or how do you manage the processed water at the end of the treatment?
Good questions. And I could start with the economics and then the water treatment. And I would like to discuss it mostly from the sewage sludge ashes, because that is where we are farthest. The other is still very much in the lab. And I can tell you that for the sewage sludge ashes, we have a small company who bought our patent, so it's actually being upscaled. And that is a basis of economic. They looked into the economics and saw that this was actually feasible. And we have had a lot of, and now I'm glad you got to say it, because we've had a very good collaboration with Biofos. This is the incineration plants. We have 2 in Denmark for sewage sludge. And they have also helped us a lot in different projects trying to calculate the economics. And I would say that this differs from country to country, because it depends also on the tax that you're paying to deposit the ash. And you can imagine, okay, the one goes to Norway, that's extremely expensive. But the sewage sludge ash, that we can handle in Denmark, but it is mono landfill and it is still at a very high landfill cost. So you could say if you treat it, you already start having that cost, having not to pay that cost. And with that one including that you can extract the price of the phosphorus you extract, there's actually quite good economy in it. And if you could even sell the ash, then it would of course be even better if you could sell it to the brickworks. And then the other one was about the water resources that we're using, and I think that's an extremely good question, and I'm actually quite happy to have it, because you can imagine that if you're washing these ashes, which are many processes, if you're washing it, you actually use a lot of liquid to get it out. But here in our process, the liquid to solid, there's less liquid to solid than when you wash it. And of course we are using liquids, but our intention is to reuse it until we have the concentration where it can be spread on farmlands. And the electrolyte solutions, what you saw in the glass container, this one we are reusing it for very long time. And then of course it ends up where we precipitate what is there, ions, and then take that one out. But in principle, of course, there is a use of water, but it is not very huge. And it does not need to be distilled water or tap water. It cannot contain too many organics, because if it does that, then we'll have fouling of the membrane. But otherwise, we're not very, it does not need to be something you can drink.
Very good. So we are almost about the time. So there are some questions in the chat box. They're asking of the treated sludge, the treated, what is that? They're saying that what extent reusing the ashes can be found. Okay, that's economic, but they're asking, other than the bricks, are there any other applications in the construction for the materials that you create at the end?
Yes, we are testing a wide range actually, and the bricks seems to be very good. That was also why I presented that most. But we also mix it into concretes, and we have different options there, and it can be used instead of sand in concrete. It's very fine, so it cannot replace every sand, but the finest fraction of sand it could be replaced, and then it goes in with the tiles that I showed you made from concrete. Then it goes in. If we grind it, it can react as cement. But it has very low reactivity, so it's mostly a filler. But it can be used in cement also. And then we are in the ash cycle. We are trying to see if it can be used in dry cast concrete as well, where I actually think it has huge potentials. We didn't even try it yet, but all of us agree that it actually has a very good structure, this fine sand, so it could maybe be very good there. So we are going to test it in the project, but we did not try it yet. It's not very good in alkali activated materials because it has a very low reactivity. So it's I would say that it is bricks, which is simply just to do it. You don't need to grind it. You don't need to do anything with it. You can simply mix it into the clay.
Mm-hmm. Someone is suggesting maybe looking into artificial aggregates, creating artificial
good idea. We did not do it, but it is a very good idea.
So that's good. I will share you this the chat box file, and maybe you can see all the comments by the attendees. And then let me put the email address of Professor Ottosen so that everybody can contact her by email if you have additional questions or you want to collaborate with her on any of your ongoing projects. So let me just put this one in the chat box, your email address. Okay, here. I got it done. So that's good. It's a lot. It seems like a lot of interest. People, typing their comments here. But thank you very much, Lisbeth, for taking the time. I know you're traveling.
Thank you so much.
Not easy to present while you're traveling. But thank you so much. I'm sure a lot of people got to know you, got to know your work, and hopefully, we created some networking opportunities for all the attendees. So again, on behalf of all the attendees, I want to thank you again. So any closing comments before we close the session?
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Thanks. Bye, everyone. See you next week. Bye, everyone. And Johan, how are you? So, how are you doing? Good?
Fine.
Fine, thank you. Thank you. So
Yeah.
glad that we are able to attend the webinars that you are organizing constantly, and huge gratitude from our side to you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you. Thank you. So
Yeah.
you changed the time, daylight saving time, or no?
No. In a couple of weeks, at the end of March, we will
So
switch to the
yeah,
day.
that creates a lot of confusion. That creates a lot of confusion, you know.
Yeah.
Some people don't change the time, but then they have it will be 1 hour before we used to have it, and then some places they change it, but not this week. So
Yeah.
it creates a lot of confusion.
Generally, it is the first week after the spring equinox. So by the end of March, something like that.
Yeah, we did it last weekend.
Yeah, we noticed on our some apparatuses that they switched to US time. I said, why did they switch? So we found that information that they are connected to US, and so
yeah, it's really hard, to just even for us also just to keep tracking of,
yeah. Hopefully by 2026 it will be arranged so that there will be no more switches. Okay.
Sounds good. So say hi to everyone there.
Thank you.
Sir. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.